Hey, what is up, everyone? This is Lucas, and I'm gonna do a live editing session. It should be hopefully somewhere around an hour, hour and a half. That's really how much time I have. So we'll do as much editing as possible. I will also try and explain what I'm doing as I'm doing it, but sometimes I might forget since this is a live stream. You can also ask questions if you want in the chat. Hopefully I'll be able to see it. This is really the first time I'm live streaming, so hopefully the sound and everything will be okay. I also might create a proper video or edited video from the stream and upload it later on, so it's in a shorter form and avoiding any pauses or things that are not relevant. So in terms of the photo shoot, this was for a 2-bedroom property, very small property. It's for a real estate agent. I basically will be doing flambient, so flash and ambient, and blending these together. And for my ambient shots, I took a bracket of 3 photos. So we have the bright exposure, middle exposure, and the dark exposure. I was using Cam Ranger as well, so in that case I've set it up to take I think it was 1 2/3 of a stop apart for each of these. The weather was quite bad outside as well, so don't pay attention to the windows. And then I took the flash shots, and this was using the Godox AD200. I didn't have to use I do have 600 as well, but this was a small flat. I really didn't need, especially for small rooms like these. It will be overkill with the AD600. All right, so let's try and get the show on the road. I haven't done anything to the photos. We're in the develop module, and so let's start maybe with one of the images. So usually what I'll do is I'll edit one image. I do have presets and things like that, but for the purposes of this video or this guide, I'm just going to go through everything. So the profile, I'm going to leave it at color. I do like standard as well for real estate. If it would be something like interior architecture design, I would probably change it to something a little bit different. I usually would work in neutral, standard, or use one of the other presets I've bought here. So to start with, in terms of the exposure, we're pretty much okay. We're sitting on the right hand side of the mid of the histogram, so we're pretty okay here. I'm just going to drop highlights a little bit. We don't need much. And also, by the way, I'm using the tablet and a pen, so it's a little bit annoying to dial the correct numbers on these bars here, but I'll do my best. So I'm just gonna do some basic adjustments. As you can see, dropping highlights, dropping blacks a little bit, and then increasing our shadows and whites to get our dynamic range stretched out a little bit. I'm going to leave clarity. I might add a hint of contrast, but we'll probably add it in Photoshop later on. And to be honest, that's going to be pretty much it. In terms of sharpening, I'm just going to increase the masking, and I'm just holding Alt to see which areas I want to sharpen, and anything in white will be basically sharpened. So I'm just gonna leave it somewhere around here. Amount, let's maybe put it around 60 or around there. My lens corrections here are done automatically, so it automatically recognizes the lens I've used, which is Sony FE 12-24 millimeters. I'm also going to tick remove chromatic aberration. So I've done a basic edit on the photo. I'm not changing the white balance at all because, first of all, I don't need it for the ambient shot for the flash and ambient blending. But secondly, we're going to copy the settings from this photo to the other ones. So to do that, I'm just going to go down here where I have my film strip. I'm going to go all the way to the right, and then while holding Shift, I'll click on the last photo. So it's going to select everything, and I'm going to click Sync. Normally, you can remove white balance. If I would have it ticked now, it wouldn't make difference because I haven't changed anything in white balance. It's as shot, so that wouldn't really matter. I haven't done any transforms, any crops. I didn't use any masking, so I'm not worried about that. Everything is ticked. I'll click OK, and it's going to synchronize everything. And I'm going to press Control D to deselect everything. And I'm going to start marking with my numeric keyboard number 5, just to mark it that I'd like to use that photo for editing. Now, we could blend the other 2 brackets and make a one kind of HDR photo out of that, but I'm not going to bother with that. We're just going to use most likely middle frames out of all those photos and blend them with our flash layers. So the next thing we'll have to do is go through our flash layers here. As you can see, this one is way overblown, so I've dropped the power of the flash in the next one a little bit. It's still very, very bright. So what I'm going to do is you can either go into the middle of the histogram and pull here to drop the exposure, or you can use the bar on the bottom. So I think somewhere around -0.6 looks good to us. I'm not really bothered about changing highlights, shadows, and all that stuff. We already kind of did the basic preset. I don't want to spend too much time on this particular part of editing. So the only other thing I really want to do, especially for our flash shots, is to set up white balance. And for that, I'm just going to press W, which is going to enable our white balance picker. And I'm going to select an area that should be white or neutral gray around that. So I might need to kind of go around a little bit and adjust the settings. So I think somewhere around here we're looking pretty okay. There are some little problems, specifically using a very powerful flash. The light starts bouncing, picking up different color casts from the floor and so on, and you just cannot avoid it. So there's definitely areas that we'll have to fix. Also, I think it's because I'm using the 12 to 24 millimeter lens. I cannot even put a filter on top of it because the lens itself is curved, and I think because of that I do get where the vignetting normally appears, I also do get a lot of discoloration. So if I'll zoom in here, you can see this area here is more cyan, green, bluish, and this appears, same kind of here. And I'm pretty sure that's due to the lens and the way the light enters those lenses. So they're very wide, but also the problem I've noticed with these particular ones is the discoloration. In any case, if you're using regular lens, you shouldn't be worried about that. Okay, now that we've set up the white balance, I'm just going to press and hold Shift, select the other 2, and I'm going to sync it. And I'm making sure that I've got the white balance set here as well. So it's going to copy the white balance. And these 2 shots were taken basically to kind of cover this area of the mirror. This is a little bit darker, but as you can see where I did the flash shot here, it actually messed up the top right corner. So we're going to try and fix it using one of those 2 layers. One thing I haven't thought about is the light in the mirror here. I should have done that when I was on site, but there will be many times where you'll kind of forget about those things. Fortunately, we'll be able to kind of blend these 2 together and make it work, I think. Okay, I've also taken a shot here. Let's see, I might use it. I'm not 100% sure. I'm just going to increase the exposure a little bit, and we'll see if we will use it or not. So I'm going to mark these with 5 stars. And let's move to the next one. So this is our natural light layer, so the ambient. I'm just going to drag the exposure up a little bit, raise the shadows a little bit, and drop highlights a little bit, just to give it a bit more dynamic range. And okay, we have our main flash taken from behind the camera. You can see obviously my reflection here and the hotspot created by flash. So I'm going to drop the exposure. And let's try and set the white balance. I think maybe from the pillow here is the best. Will work on the color correction as well as we edit the photo. But yeah, I think that's fine. Again, shift click the rest of the flash images in this particular shot. I'm going to sync them. And let's have a look. I don't think we can probably raise the exposure on these a little bit. So this shot has been taken to cover that area here that had the obviously the flash hotspot, so I can get this fixed. And this was more trying to mimic the natural light coming from the door here, so there's a fall off and the shadows coming a little bit further. I'm really not 100% sure if I'll be needing that, but why not? Let's use it. I'm just going to reset the exposure, yeah, probably to somewhere like minus 0.16, something like that. And then I've taken one exposure just for the outside view. It's a very easy window here in the door. We'll be able to mask it quite easily. I'm just going to drop the whites a little bit, and I think we're okay. So I'm just going to mark that with 5 stars. Let's go to the next one. So I'm just going straight to our middle exposures. Let's mark it with 5 stars, and I'm going to drop the exposure here a little bit. And highlights and raise shadows. Again, I'm not worried about the white balance really, because we're going to be using flash for the color. So let's go to the flash layers. So I've taken one outside in the room there. I believe, yes, the walls were white. So I'm just going to click on the wall so we can set the white balance there. Make little adjustments here and there. So we'll probably use that later on in lighten mode. And let's start with the flash shot from behind the camera. And let's set our white balance. So again, I'm using W on the keyboard to quickly get the white selector tool. And then as soon as you click, it basically reverts back to your loop. Okay, more or less we're there. Let me just copy the settings to the other. And usually these two shots are taken. This one is supposed to reflect the light back onto this side, and the other one is supposed to do the opposite. So I'm just making little adjustments to them. And let's mark these with 5 stars. Okay, so this one's a little bit bright, so I'm going to drop it just so it sits somewhere in the middle right of the histogram. Again, I'm going to raise the shadows a little bit and drop highlights Let's mark it with 5 stars. Then we have, okay, there's something I didn't notice, but you can see the room here, and obviously there's me with the flash. So obviously we won't be able to use that, and that means that this area will probably be quite dark because I don't have a frame to replace that. You see, some things, as I said, you find out only when you're on site. Okay, I'm just adjusting the white balance here a little bit. Let's mark this with 5 stars. And I'm going to find a frame where I've shot from behind the camera, which was this one here. I'm going to drop our exposure. And let's set the white balance. And that looks decent. So let's put 5 stars on that. Select the rest and sync them. So obviously I'm bouncing the light back, trying to kind of do this area and this area. And this one will be able to kind of fix the mirror here a little bit. There is a hotspot in the door, but it's not too big of a deal. We'll probably be able to use this frame. And do we need this one? Let's see. Yes, I kind of like the shadows. They're much softer here under this bedside table. If you look here, it's very harsh. But if we use this one, it's much softer. Okay, let's move to the next one. That looks pretty good. Let's just give it 5 stars. Let's move to our... Let's start with the main flash taken from behind the camera. I'm just going to try and set the white balance. And I think we're quite okay here. I'm just pressing Alt, and while I change the whites, I can see where it's being overexposed. So obviously these are very close. I'm not too bothered about that because that's going to be fixed with the other layers, or at least I hope so. So this is 5 stars. Let's select the rest of flash layers. I'm going to synchronize everything. So this kind of mimics the light coming from the window and then going this way across, so you can see the shadows. That's another thing. If you lower your flash, so it's not as high up the ceiling, the shadows are much softer. But as you can see, there's a lot of spread of that light here that we won't be able to use. I'm going to use that probably. Then we have flash taken from left hand side, so it's supposed to light up kind of this area. And I might drop the whites here a little bit so it's not as harsh, and the same with highlights. And then I've taken one on this side, so that should fix our flowers here, and obviously the left hand side. And I think we don't really need to do any changes to that. And then we have our kitchen. So this looks okay, but obviously we have this hotspot here. And this hotspot is a little bit better, but still there. So we'll deal with it as we edit those photos. Let's move to the next one. I'm going to give it 5 stars, mark it with 5 stars. Drop our exposure a little bit. I think we're pretty okay. Increase the shadows a little. And okay, we have our flash. So that's really bright. Okay, yeah. As you can see, I've taken it at 1/8 of a second, which means a lot of ambient light was able to get into the photo. That's why it's so discolored. Yeah, if you look at this one, is much less of the ambient light here. Let's try and set the white balance. So I think that looks okay. I'm just going to drop whites a little bit and highlights. Mark it with 5 stars. And let's select everything else there. Maybe this one as well. And synchronize. Now to make it a kind of a faster job on site, I left the lights on, and I obviously took the ambient shots with the lights on. If I really want to have a big control over lights and how everything appears, I would usually shoot a natural light without the lights. Then I would shoot with the lights, typically one for ambient, so it'll be brighter frame, maybe something like that, or even a little bit brighter. And then I'll shoot one where it actually exposes mostly for lights, and then combine these in Photoshop later on. But I'll probably do a video on that as well at some point. Okay, let's see. I kind of like that yellow light coming from the above. I really don't remember that light. I'm going to mark it with 5 stars, and I might use this part. I'm not 100% sure yet. Let's look at the other one. So this looks pretty okay. I might just drop the whites here a little bit. This one lights up this area. It's not bad. Again, drop these a little bit. This is for the stairs. And then I was thinking about lighting up this area here, and my Godox AD200 Pro was set still at a very high power, so as you can see it's just terrible. But thinking about it, this area looks pretty okay, so I'll put 5 stars and we'll see later on. Okay, so this is much softer, so I'm just going to change the white balance on here, and we'll see, we might use it. And then we have the kitchen. So we have a shot taken from the right hand side, so it lights up this area. And then we have a shot taken from the left hand side, which lights up this area. This is way too bright, but my goal here was actually to light up that area, which that looks pretty okay here. And then I've taken one shot with the flash just there, and as you can see, it left a little bit of a streak of light there. I think I prefer this one, so I'm just going to mark that with 5 stars. Let's go to the next one. So this is the kitchen. I'll give this one 5 stars, and let's have a look here. Okay, changing the white balance, and let's drop these a little bit. Okay, let's select the rest, and I'll sync everything. So I moved my flash a little bit to the right of the camera, so it lights this area a little bit better. Let's give this one 5 stars. This one 5 stars. And then I moved even closer. It's a very small space here, so as you can see, it blasts this thing with the light a lot. Let's drop the exposure. I'll drop highlights, whites a little bit. And let's mark it with 5 star. And this was to light this area here. So let's have a look at the frames and see if you see I removed myself from here and just left AD200 on the kitchen top. You see this one at least lights up that area here. So I'm really kind of okay, I think I might just use that. I think that will do. The only problem I have here is this shadow. It's not too bad if you think about the light coming from this window, kind of, you know, that's maybe where the shadow would go, but I think it should be lower. But we have this frame here, which I can use, or this one, which is a little bit darker. So I'm just gonna settle on that. Then I took a frame for the outside. Now, I'll probably won't use it, but let's mark it with 5 stars. And then what I did, basically a window pull. So as you can see, I've really had my flash set high. So we'll see if we can use these for the window pull. I've taken one shot from right and one shot from left, like this one. So we have 2 available there. Okay, let's drop the exposure on this one a little bit, highlights, but let's increase the shadows. And let's mark that with 5 stars. Okay, for this one, again, let's set white balance. Maybe let's try the toaster. I think that worked last time. I think it looks decent. So I'm just going to drop exposure on this one. Actually, before I do, let's put it on 0 and then let's select all the other shots of the kitchen and sync it before that, because we'll have to be pulling everything up afterwards. So Control D to deselect. Let's go back to our shot here. And I'm going to drop now exposure down. I'm really looking at kind of this area here in the foreground. Let's drop the whites a little bit. So let's mark that with 5 stars. We have even brighter one. Let's drop the exposure and see how much details we can recover here and if it's going to work. I think yeah, this is 1/80th of a second and this is 1/80th. Yeah, to be honest, there's not much difference. Let's put 0 on that. This was the shot taken in the living room. And this one was, I think, taken for the kitchen to try and light up the kitchen from this side. That looks pretty decent. We might use it. So I've just changed the white balance a little bit. Changing the white balance here again. Just going to drop everything. We have this hot spot, which is not ideal. But this one doesn't. So I'm just going to copy the settings between these two. So they're matching. Maybe I'll pull the exposure a little bit. Okay. Let's see. We have our foreground here. We have a little bit of the back of the kitchen. Just going to drop that. And let's look at the other frames. Okay. And I was trying to light up from where the window is. Okay, this one is not too bad. Just going to drop the whites and highlights. It'll light up that area for us, I think, pretty decent. And we might use this one to kind of fix that foreground a little bit, because the one we have is a little bit overexposed. But I think we might need to increase our highlights a little bit and the shadows. I'm tempted to change the white balance here. I think that's what I'll do. We'll do color correction if we need to. Okay, let's go to our next photo. Bathrooms. These are usually darker. So I'm just going to raise exposure but drop the highlights and increase the shadows. Let's give that 5 stars here. And let's set the white balance. So we have, I think there's 3 options here. We could try the ceiling, but from what I can see, the color of the tiles and the flooring gets reflected in the ceiling. So that's going to create a false, I think, white balance for us. I think will be more accurate if we use the label on the soap here or the toilet paper. Yeah, that looks a little bit better, I think. I think, to be honest, this one looks kind of closest, really. So we might go with that. And I don't know if you can see, again, I can see a lot of, especially like small closed spaces. There's a lot of that discoloration I do get, I think because of the lens, as I said, on the corners. It's this cyan green color, which is a little bit annoying and requires some color correction. But yeah, again, we'll be dealing with that. Okay, let's give it 5 stars, select the rest and sync. And let's see. So obviously we have a problem of this hotspot here and this hotspot here. So these are really 2 we need to resolve. And I think this one is pretty decent. They're going to overlap here a little bit, but it's bright. So I'm going to give it 5 stars. Then we have a super bright shot. I don't need that. And there is a darker one here. So I think that will work fine. And we have something to cover that area. Just let me just raise the shadows here a little bit. I think that's all right. I've taken 2 while crouching. But yeah, I think this one works the best at the moment. So let's leave it at that. Okay, so I'm just going to use the filter now. I'm going to press the 5 stars. And let's go back to our first photo. So I'm going to select our frames, right click, edit in, open as layers in Photoshop. Right, apologies, I had a phone call, so I had to take that. All right, I'm going to press Control 0. That's going to fill our canvas here. I'm not going to rename, do I? Okay, let's rename this one to Ambient, just so we know this is an Ambient. But we want it obviously at the top, and we want to change its blending mode to Luminosity. Okay, and you know, if you really want the photo done in 3 seconds, this is what you can do. Ambient, Luminosity, set opacity. To be honest, set opacity wherever it looks good. 50, I think, is something recommended by Nathan Cool typically, and it, you know, in 80% of situations, I found that it's the best. But you can set it at whatever you want. I'm just gonna put it back at 100 right now, and we'll do our blending a little bit to make the image better. Because if we blend it like this, so let's put this at 50% luminosity in the luminosity blending mode. We have a couple of problems. So obviously where the hotspot is from this flash, we have a little bit of a problem here. And there's definitely discoloration and things like that. And we have the same situation here by the mirror. And you know, we have little things like shadows generated by flash but not really appearing in our ambient layer are causing these discolorations. This one is not too bad, but there is a bit of a kind of orange brown discoloration there. So for the time being, let's turn off visibility of our ambient layer. And this is going to be our, let's call it a base layer. So I like this one. It has, you know, the best exposure, but there's some areas, as I mentioned before, that we have a problem with. So let me just use a red color here. So we have our flash here, and then we have this area here. And looking at the photo, really, that's probably the only two areas we need to fix. So because this is our main layer, I'm just going to drag that to the bottom. So it's on the bottom of the layer stack. And we're going to use these two layers here to fix our issues. So let's have a look. This is our brighter layer. And I think it's going to fix most of the problem here. And I think it's going to fix some problems here, perhaps. Yeah. So let's do that. I'm going to press Alt and click on the mask icon here, and it's going to create a black layer. So it's going to make everything from that layer on top here not visible. And we want to select our brush tool. Make sure it's foreground color selected to white. I'm going to make it a little bit bigger. And make sure the hardness is set to 0. And we're going to paint in with our white brush the areas that we want to fix. So I'm just going to zoom in here a little bit. My flow is at 5%, so I'm going to press Shift 2 just to change the flow to 20%, which is a little bit better. So we have some overlap here, but that's at least better than the previous frame or the main flash frame. And then we're just going to get this one done. Okay. So that looks better. Without and with. If you want to see or remove temporarily the mask, you can press Shift and click on the mask, and that shows the frame without the mask attached. So I think maybe we draw a little bit more here. Yeah, it's not bad. And then let's add our third one. So as you can see, this is even better, but it's darker. But we can probably fix these things. And then this might look better as well. So again, I'm going to press Alt, add a mask. And as you can see, it's darker. So what I'm going to do is go to our adjustment layers. I'm going to select curves, and I'm going to clip it to this dark frame. And I can do that either by pressing this button here, or if I press and hold Alt and go in between both layers, I can click and it's going to clip it, which means it will only affect the layer underneath. And then we can raise our brightness here a little bit. All right. So this is where we are. I might actually... so this curve has a white mask, which means everything is affected. I'm going to change it to black and just remove this area here. We don't need that. Which is good. I'm going to press and hold Shift and select all the layers in the stack. I'm going to press Ctrl G to put it in the group, and I'm just going to name it Flash. So this is our Flash. And now I want to correct colors. So to do that, again, if we go to our adjustment layers and let's find hue saturation. And again, for the hue saturation, we have a white mask. So any changes I'll do will be affected, that it will affect the whole frame. So what I like to do, if you go to select menu and go to color range, we can start selecting which parts of the image we want to select. So right now it remembers my selection from last time I've used it. But if I click somewhere, let's say here, you can see anything that's appearing whiter here is selected and anything in red is not selected. Now, at the moment here, I have sampled colors, which is exactly what I want to do because I want to select colors that I'm clicking or adding to our selection. And then I'm using localized color clusters. This basically only selects colors that are in a small range, which is defined by this range slider here, from where you clicked. So because I clicked here, it only selects the same color within that particular small range. But if I removed localized colors, the one I've selected, it will select the color throughout the whole photo. So it's really for you to decide what kind of works better for you. I'm just going to leave it on at the moment. And in terms of fuzziness, this controls our threshold. So how far away from the color we selected, it will allow other colors to also appear in the selection. So as I raise the fuzziness, you can see it starts selecting more and more of that color. Okay, so this is kind of where it goes. There's also a little preview here. So let's keep it somewhere maybe around 30, around that. Now we want to add to the selection, and to do that you can press and hold Shift and start tapping, or even just press and hold left mouse button and then you can just glide through everything. So I'm just adding these on. Okay, we want these. You know, this is the wall here in the mirror reflection. Now, typically mirrors, you'll notice they have a little bit of a tint to them. Most of the mirrors that I've came across have a little bit of like a green or cyan tint to them. So you'll always find that the color is a little bit different. But here we are. So I've made the selection here. Just thinking, I think we're going to add the bedding as well, because the bedding is white. So I'm just going to add these as well. We've been selecting a lot here. So as you can see, it did a lot. It's even encroaching on the flooring as well. But a lot of stuff is still not selected, the one in red, which is pretty good. Now we have the shadow here. We probably want to add the shadow to the selection. So I'm just going to click. And that looks pretty decent. So what I'm going to do now is press OK. And what you'll notice is the selection we just made has been automatically added to our hue saturation layer. So at the moment, I haven't made any changes to hue saturation, so our color correction. Let's just change it to color correction. But I can start playing around with, for example, saturation. So if I drop it all the way down, you can see how it desaturates everything. If I go all the way up, it's doing that. So this is the easiest way, and then we can just drop our saturation here a little bit. You don't have to go 100%, anywhere around 45, 50, you know, from minus 50 up to 0 is somewhere where you want to be most of the time to make it look more or less natural. But also you don't have to go only for that. We're in the master folder here, or a master selection, which basically controls all the colors at the same time. If you want, you can select specific colors as well. It will only do those specific colors. So if we go to science, I increase the saturation. As you can see, those ones appear, they appear actually around areas where I don't really need them. So you can drop the saturation just on that science, maybe to minus 80 or around that. Let's go to blues. Blues is kind of similar. We don't really need these retained anywhere. So if you look, you know, this is white, so we don't really need anything. Obviously, if there will be something blue in the photo, you might want to think how much you want to drop it. But yeah, that's another thing. But for this one, it works well. So I'll put maybe like 70. Let's do greens. This is going to be, as I said, like not only because of my lens, as I said, in the corners, that's where I get the discoloration, but also the mirror itself has a little bit of this green tint to it. So I'm going to drop it maybe by around 30. And then we have yellows. So the yellows is going to be the major color here, and a lot of reflection. The light reflects a lot of that flooring back onto the ceiling, which creates all our trouble. So I'm going to drop it probably maybe to around 30. And as you can see, we're losing a little bit of color in other areas, but I'm not worried about this just now. We'll be able to fix it in a moment. Let's go to magentas. Almost no magentas. There's a little bit here. So I'm just going to drop that totally. And we did yellows. Okay, we have reds. Okay, reds also appear in areas that we kind of need removed. There's not that much reds, and we want to definitely keep it in the headboard. So I'm just going to drop it maybe like 25. So now I'm going to press Ctrl-0 to fill the screen or the canvas with the photograph. I'm going to, this is before the color correction, and then this is with the color correction. I'm not sure if you'll be able to see the difference. I'm not trying to make it totally white. If you want, as I said, you can, and it's easy. And a lot of real estate agents actually very much like the super clean white look, but it really does look very unnatural. Now, if you're worried about some areas that have been affected by this, what we can do is if we put the color correction adjustment layer in a group, so I'll press Ctrl-G while I have the hue saturation here selected. I can rename it. Let's call it color correction. So now if I switch it off, as you can see, it turns on and off the same. But what I can do is I can just add a regular mask. So if I'll just click on it without any key modifiers, it will add a white mask, which means that it lets everything in the group come through. What I can do now is change my brush to black. So I'm using X to swap between the black and white, or the foreground and background color. And then if you want to change it to default black and white colors, you can press D on the keyboard. So if I select, let's say, let's say I've select a red brush, as you can see here. If I press D, it's going to reset it to black and white color. So this is kind of what we want. So let's select black, and then I'm just going to paint in these areas here a little bit. Actually, to be honest, I don't need the bedding. We can swap to our white brush and get the bedding changed, but we want the flooring to have the color retained, and probably the headboard here. So I'm just going to paint it a little bit on top here. Maybe this kind of the wooden thing for the mirror. And I think that kind of looks all right. And as I mentioned, I do have a little bit of a problem with this part here. So if you compare let's compare two colors. I'm just going to select my brush tool. Let's just make a new layer. I'm going to press Alt to sample the color. So I'm going to sample the color from the floor here. Now I'm going to press X, which will swap to my white color, and I'm going to press Alt again. I'll sample the color from the other part. And as you can see, there's a difference between these two colors. Again, probably in most situations, you won't really come across that. I really have it only with my 12 to 24 millimeter lens. As I said, the lens are actually curved. I cannot even put a filter on top of them, and I think because of that, the way the light enters the lens, it causes some problems, especially if you use flash. So I'll call this layer color, but before we do, let's press G. So I'm going to, oops, I need to pick the colors again. I've messed it up. So let's sample the one color here and one color from here. And I'm going to use the paint bucket tool. I'm going to fill. So this is the color taken from the flooring. I'm going to switch to brush and swap the color, and I'll start painting with the other color. And as you can see, it creates a very, very different color. There's quite a bit of a difference if you think about it. So that's why I want to fix that area here. The rest looks fairly okay. I can see a little bit of discoloration here. So we're just going to, let's get rid of this one, make a new layer. I'll call it color. And I'm going to change blending mode to color. Let's switch to our brush. And what I'll probably do is I'll press L to select our lasso tool, polygonal lasso tool, and I'm just going to make a rough selection around the areas that really should be our floor color. I actually don't need it that accurate, but anyway. I'm going to press B for our brush tool, and I'm going to swap back to the color we sampled from the the left-hand side. And I'm going to gently tap a few times to kind of color correct this. Okay, so this is after, and this is before. Hopefully you can see the difference. Okay, I'm just going to press Ctrl D to remove our marching ants. And let's go back to the other parts of the flooring. So again, I'm just tapping gently. Just kind of trying to get rid of that cyan green color. Maybe even here a little bit, doesn't seem like it's okay. So this is after, and here's before. Hopefully, again, you can see the difference. And if you feel it's too much, maybe we drop opacity to 75. I'll actually put it probably 85, because those changes are pretty decent. So we have our flash layer. We have, let's put this in the group. We have our color correction. Now, why I want to do color correction before ambient is just because ambient we're going to be using in luminosity mode, so it won't actually change any color. So if we can get our flash looking pretty decent, then we can just click here on ambient, which is in luminosity mode, and then we can drop the opacity here. Around 50 seems pretty decent. What I often like doing as well, we can go to add curves adjustment layer. I'm gonna clip it to our ambient, and then you can make more changes from here. So if we need to make it brighter and so on, and this only right now affects our ambient layer. So this adds a little bit of a punch here. And that's pretty much okay. The last thing I want to do is any fixes. So if there's any imperfections I need to remove, maybe sensor dust, anything like that, I create a layer for that. Let's call it fixes. And so this particular layer doesn't really have much we need to do, apart from one thing that I've noticed just as I was fixing the color of our flooring here. We have the tripod legs. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to just use the remove tool and see how well it does. So let's do this. Okay, that looks pretty decent, so I'm gonna leave that. If you're super focused, you can actually remove this little bit. Let's see what it does. Yeah. Also, just a quick tip, or if you're having trouble and your remove tool is not doing proper job, make sure sample all layers is enabled. That means that it will look at all the layers, not just the fixes layers we've created, but it will look actually underneath. Secondly, I remove generative AI. I don't want it to be generating anything. I only want the removal, because I think it will add information about any AI generated stuff in your image if you start using generative AI. From what I understand, I'm not 100% sure on that, but I think that's the way it works. And I have removed the tick for remove after each stroke, which means I can go around and I'll do, let's say, one selection, and I've removed or I depressed the left mouse button or removed my pen from the tablet, and I can still go back and add to the selection. And then if I add something that I shouldn't have, I can press Alt and I can remove that from selection. So it allows me a little bit more flexibility. And then let's press the tick here. And that's pretty decent. We have a little bit of a problem here as well. Okay, let's remove the obvious ones here. Also, if you make a selection around something and you close it off, it will actually select everything inside as well, just as I did with this. So let's, you can press enter or the tick and it will remove the stuff. And the remove tool has been really, really good. Okay, it did a little bit of a trouble here, but if you're not using remove tool, the other one I really like to use is healing brush tool. This is my probably second choice if I need to make fixes manually. So if I zoom in here, we have a little bit of a discoloration here, but it's not a big deal. It's a small area. And guys, just to let you know, I don't spend that much time on cleaning stuff like that. those things you could probably leave in. No one would be complaining about it, in all honesty. They're more for pixel peepers, really, that notice it. But yeah, to remove those areas, as I said, you can press Alt, select an area here. And I like the healing brush because it kind of respects the luminosity, if I may call that. If I would use the clone stamp tool, if I'll sample from here, this area is a little bit darker, and it's going to use the darker color here, and you'll see the difference immediately. But with the healing brush tool, as you can see, it respects the luminosity. That's how I would call it. The only thing is that you have to avoid high contrast areas. So if I try and, let's say, press Alt here, and I try to do something here, you see how it creates this very blurry blob. That's kind of a problem. So you have to stay away from contrast areas. But what we can do for here, for example, I can sample the area here, and I'll try and match the line, and then go this way, and at the same time fix this area. Okay, so that looks pretty decent. There's some reflection of the tripod here. Again, I can press Alt and quickly make changes here. I'm not even resampling. Every time I depress left mouse button or remove my pen and I put it back on, as you can see, it starts from the same spot. But with healing brush, it doesn't really matter much. You won't really see much difference. So I can use really the same thing here. I'm just trying to blend it in. We have the line here. So obviously if I start going here, if I go on the line, it's going to mess it up. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select this line here and try and align it, and then blend this way, and it actually gives you a fairly good result. And that's about it. So here we go. I don't really need to do much more with this one. I'm just going to press Control S to save it, and we'll go back to Lightroom and work on the next photo. Okay, it's loading that edited image. So I'm just going to press 6, which adds the red label to the image, so I know this is the TIFF file of the blend. And let's move to our next photo. Again, opening everything in Photoshop, so as layers in Photoshop. Apologies, I think the frames are getting dropped a lot as Lightroom is loading everything into Photoshop. Okay, here we go. So we have our ambient layer here. I'm just going to rename it to ambient. On the bottom, there's our window. Let's call it window. Let's remove visibility for those. We have our base layer, so I'm just gonna drop it down. I'm going to try and work a little bit faster here now, just to kind of show you how I would do it. So I might not be explaining as much. And let's work on these layers, fixing everything. So this was to fix the hotspot. I'm just gonna add a mask and paint it in. Just adding a little bit of natural shadow as well. Since the light is coming from that window here, we would see shadows on this side, if you want to make it believable. And if we want, we can also use even this one. Although, to be honest, let's just get rid of it. I'm not going to complicate it for real estate. Your agent will want it super bright. Let's do our colors. I have a shortcut for sample colors, so I just use the keyboard shortcut. It's not actually by default in Photoshop, so this is something you would need to set up on your own. just to let you know. So this is totally custom shortcut for select color. Okay, the last selection looks decent. I'm not even going to bother with each channel. I'm just going to drop everything on the master down. Now I'm going to put it in the group, and I'm going to actually add a black mask. Again, I've created my own keyboard shortcut, so if it feels like how did it appear out of nowhere, your black mask, this is how. I have my custom shortcut. There's no keyboard shortcut by default in Photoshop, so you need to create your own. Actually, at some point I might export a file with my keyboard shortcuts and make a list of what they do, and maybe allow for it to be downloaded from somewhere. I'll see how it how it goes. Okay, so now that I've masked it and I've got the saturation down, now I'm just going to paint the areas that I want to be white or remain more white. Let's call it this way. So I'm not even doing too much. Okay, this door is much of a different color, so here I just have to be a little bit more careful. But that's fine. As long as you use a brush that's soft, so the hardness 0, you shouldn't have too much trouble. And yeah, I'm pretty happy with that. Let's just add a color layer. Just gonna make a little fix that's really bothering me, discoloration. So again, probably if I wouldn't be recording a tutorial video, I probably would just leave it be. You wouldn't even notice it much. But just for my own self. Let's do our ambient, change to luminosity, and so this is the situation where what I might do is put a mask and then paint in the areas that I want from the ambient layer. For example, I don't like the reflections of the light here. These could be obviously removed afterwards using the remove tool or healing brush and so on, but I don't really want to deal with it. And second of all, I think it will help to make the image more clean. So let's add a black mask. I'm going to pick up the white brush. It's set to flow at 20%, and I'm just going to paint in the areas that I do want to be or to have this ambient quality to it, ambient light quality. And I kind of like the yellow light, so I'm just going to remove some of the all right. Not sure about the lights. Yeah, they look a little bit better exposed in the flash layer, so let's leave it like that. And yeah, I think that's roughly it. Let's add curves, clip it. I'm just gonna do a little bit of a S curve in a way. Let's add a mask for the window, and let's use our polygonal lasso tool to cut in the view. Okay, messed up here a little bit, so I'll have to fix that. I'm just going to press Alt and remove from the selection, double click to close the selection. G for paint bucket, and I'm going to paint it in with white. And here we go. That's it. And what I like to do is remove reflections. Some people might find it a no-no, maybe especially for people in the United States. I don't know if you can actually do things like that, but I do like to remove reflections of lights and things like that, especially in bathrooms. So, okay, let's select or a sample from here. And I'm just using the pen, so for this type of work, it can be sometimes a bit annoying to align things, but that looks decent. Again, I'm gonna sample from here, and that looks okay. The other thing I want to do, I could do a selection under for the TV. And since we're doing this one, we might do the other one, even though this one doesn't look too bad. I'm gonna press Paint Bucket tool and fill the TV screens with white. Black. And I'm going to select white color. I'm going to change the flow to maybe 3%. And I'm just going to tap once or twice to kind of give it illusion of some light reflecting in the TV screen. Control 0 to put it at 100%, or sorry, to fill the screen. And I also might, there's a little speck here, just remove that. And I think that will do. Let's save that. So as you can see, this didn't take much. I've just noticed something here. That's another thing. If you're a perfectionist, it's very difficult to finish the image. You always find something else afterwards. We have a little bit of discoloration here. Again, it's not a big thing. I'm just going to leave it. That's good enough to deliver. Let's save that again and go back to Lightroom. I'm going to mark this one with, okay, it's just refreshing. Let's mark that with a red label. Let's move on to the next one. I'm just going to open that in Photoshop as layers, and I'm going to go quickly to bathroom, so I'll be right back. Okay, I'm back. These are loaded, and I probably have maybe another 25 minutes or something like that I can stay. So probably for the rest of the photos, I might do a video that I'll edit later on for the rest of them, or maybe another stream. I'm not 100% sure. I do need to finish these photos, but I will have my children back in the house after school, so it will be difficult to talk and make sure that the environment is quiet. So we'll see. Most likely I will record a video of me editing the rest of the photos and then do a voiceover on top and put everything in one edited video afterwards. But again, we'll see. In any case, let's continue here. So we do have our ambient, so I'm just going to change it to ambient. And let's change luminosity to blending mode to luminosity. This is our back here. I'm just going to remove that layer for a second and let's start from here. So I'm just going to use the parts of the image that we want to use to fix. Let's do the same for the other side. So we do have a little bit of a problem with the shadows. This one is more or less kind of fixed here, but as you can see, this is much brighter. Okay, I'm not going to worry about it too much. Going to remove that hotspot. And okay, so this is pretty much done. Let's see if we put our... Okay, the lighten layer looks pretty decent. We have problem areas around here. So let me think. We can always go into screen mode and blend it this way as well. So as you can see, it works much better. But then we have trouble with all the layers. Okay, let's add mask. And I'm just going to gently paint it in. I kind of like the yellow orange lights quite a bit here, so I'm just going to paint this in as well. Next, hue saturation. I've got keyboard shortcut, our color range tool, again using my own keyboard shortcut for that. And I've mentioned all of this stuff a little bit earlier in the stream, so I'm not explaining it again. Apologies for that. If you need to find out what I did and so on, you might need to watch the earlier part of the stream. It was during the editing of the first image. Let's double mask the hue saturation. I'm just going to paint in the hue saturation layer. We just need to change our flow to something higher. Just going to paint in our hue saturation layer so it removes let's drop down this saturation here. Okay, so there's a couple areas that kind of I'm just going to use a broad strokes with this brush to get the color back in those. But apart from that, I think that looks pretty decent. Maybe in the bedding. Okay, I think this one, let's change the color, and I just wanted to kind of fix this area here a little bit. Okay, let's add a mask to our ambient. Just going to paint it in everywhere. But remove from some of the areas a little bit, so it's not as crazy looking. Move that color correction here, and going to blend here a little bit more of the color. Okay, I think that is decent. You can see my AD here. Okay, well, we're gonna fix it in a moment. So first, let's do curves, clip it to our ambient. I'm doing a little bit of an S-shaped curve. And I'm gonna fix the color here a little bit. It's this greenish tint. Same here. And then let's do fixes. So I could go back to my flash layers and remove that from the blend, but I think this area was a little bit messed up. So I'm just going to use healing brush tool. I'm just going to basically blend it in, so there's no distinction there on what's happening. And this one is not bad either. The only thing is I can see the flash here. Again, someone who doesn't know what this is, they probably wouldn't even be able to tell that this is flash. So I could leave it there. Just using the remove tool. And I think that is pretty okay. And if we want to be consistent with what I did before, we could just remove the lights from reflection so they don't distract. Same here. So do we want to remove that mirror or not? That's the question. I think yeah, I just might. Let's just blend it using our healing brush. That's why I love healing brush so much. It's so good to blend things. You know, we can remove a lot of stuff in the reflection that we don't really want. Almost screams to remove that as well right now. At least blend it a little bit. Obviously this is very reflective, so when I use flash here, it shows up by a lot. Just going to swap to our clone stamp for a moment, and then I'm going to switch back to healing brush and kind of blend that in. This is kind of other technique I like to use. Yeah, I'll leave it like that. Let's save that. And unfortunately, I'll have to end my stream here, so it's a around hour and a half into the stream. As I said, I need to pick up children from the school, and after they're back, it's going to be way too loud for me just to do a stream. So if you've watched the whole thing, thank you very much. As I've mentioned, I will probably screen record me editing the rest and add some voiceover on top of it, and probably use parts of this stream and the video I'm going to record and put together into a separate video, which is a little bit more concise. I'm going to try and remove the parts that are not necessarily needed and make a video out of that as well, and hopefully that will be pretty okay for you to view as well if you want to learn how I edit. Just to let you know, once I mark the photos that I've blended with red, typically at the end I go in and I fix the verticals using obviously the transform tool. So I always use the guided and then make the final adjustments with the section here using highlights, shadows, whites, blacks, sometimes add a little bit of clarity, vibrance, depending if it's over saturated or under saturated, and then a little bit of contrast, and that's about it. But again, I'll try and do that in a separate video. All right, I will